Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review. And today it's going to be another 4K Ultra High Definition Blu-ray review, and it is of course Blue Beetle, which is now available to purchase both here in the United Kingdom and in the United States as of this Monday the 13th of November. And I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the actual 4K alongside the film, because this is one of the rare instances where we haven't actually reviewed the film on the channel. I didn't get to see it at the cinemas, so I'm grateful to have picked up on 4K. I've now seen the film twice, and I've been able to watch, like many of the other home media reviews, all of the behind the scenes. And I'm going to be talking about not just that, but the transition with the film, but how it is visually on the disc alongside the audio track as well. So I'm going to try and give a little bit of background to this, because it's tricky. It's the 14th film in the DCEU. It's the final film in the DCEU. However, they have gone on record, James Gunn, to say that moving forward, as the reboot comes in with Superman, when that releases in 2025, Blue Beetle is one of the characters that is going to be staying with the universe. Now, whether that's something that's just been said for the sake of saying it, I do not know. But officially, that is what we have at the moment, which actually makes it far more pleasurable to be watching this film, to be talking about this film, because it's really frustrating with the cinematic universes where you get invested in a series within characters, and eventually they drop off, or it's not working, or you have to watch A, B, C to be able to watch D, E, F. So Blue Beetle's a really awkward position. It came out in cinemas in August. It grossed 110 million worldwide off a 100 million budget. It's obviously not performed financially. Of course, it's worth adding in that the strikes were in place at that point in time. The cast were unable to promote the film. And of course, Warner Brothers releasing it 3 weeks after Barbie as well, during Oppenheimer 2. Of course, it got flushed out of the box office. So I missed it, a lot of other people missed it, and it's one that I'm not too sure the general audience were familiar about it. So I'm going to actually ask people, as always, if you're going to comment your thoughts on the film if you've seen it, but also if you're aware of the character, if you've read some of the comics, if you saw it at the cinema. Because giving my initial thoughts on the film, I thought it was fine. I didn't mind it. Similar to how we did our Marvels review last week. People have spoke about this being one of the worst things they've seen. People have spoken about being one of the best things they've seen. It is quite comfortably in the middle as far as a film goes. I think the problem is that superhero fatigue is kicking into audience members. And due to that, there are going to be a lot of films that undeservedly not get watched, but essentially box office numbers, all that sorts of stuff. People aren't going to go to the cinema to watch this, and we are seeing it more and more. There has been a decline across the years. It's starting to come to Marvel now. It's affected DC for a while. Shazam 2 early this year did not make much money. The Flash, of course, one of the biggest bombs of the year. So it's a real shame about this, and its budget's 100 mil, which I want to talk about because that's still a substantial amount of money. However, it's not 250, it's not 300 million. For a $100 million film, I can see some of that budget. So my overall thoughts on the film, I know the purpose of this review is to talk about the disc, and obviously I'll end up recommending it towards the end. But I think this has been in for an unfair time. And I said I didn't go to the cinema to watch it. I guess I'm part of that problem moving forward. But as I said, the DC and whatnot, its reputational damage to a brand that has been caused by varying problems, and this is one of the unfortunate victims of this, because I thought this film's fine. And it's been like this with a few DC films, hasn't it? There's a very vocal minority. There's 3 films that get spoken about more than anything. Has some absolute bangers going under the radar. You've had a great TV series of Peacemaker. So Blue Beetle, I recommend the film. And now I'm going to talk about the disc as well. There's so much to say on the special features, which is lovely, because the last 4K review is me talking about Mission Impossible and me being thoroughly disappointed. But with this one, I'm going to talk about the visuals first. Of course, I'm watching this on my 4K setup. I have a 4K UHD disc. Thank you, Warner Brothers, for sending it as well. We didn't know if we'd be able to make the review in time. And it's one of them where, again, I was curious about seeing it at home in my own setup, proper setup. And I think visually the film looks fine. I can't fault the actual, not VFX to the point of other releases. It's a $100 million film. It should look like a $100 million film. I've got to avoid comparing it to The Creator, which I think visually is the best film of this year, in respect to global big CGI moments. But this film in particular, its transition onto the disc, I thought was fine. I don't really have any problems with it. Of course, like many new releases, you're not going to be talking about stuff such as scrubbing. I know the James Cameron films have all been announced today at the time of recording. We're going to get Titanic next month. We're getting The Abyss. We're getting True Lies in March next year. We're getting Aliens in March next year. I can't wait to pick up loads of them. And of course, with The Abyss, there's all been the 4K release and the talk of loads of scrubbing this being affected. It doesn't really have an issue on these newer films. Much of the newer film is more the colours and whatnot. And with a lot of this film being set at night, you're not able to take in the visuals as well, I guess, as you would anywhere else. And the problem then in turn goes to some of the day scenes where we can see notably green screens, blue screens and whatnot. It doesn't look as good. But I think that's the film more so than the disc. Of course, as I said, I'm watching on a 4K. Maybe that makes it more glaring when you have issues like that. But the actual CGI I'm fine with on this film. I know it's accurate to the comics, so this is not any fault of the production team, the costume department. I've never been able to get over the costume, if I'm being really honest. And I'm talking about the costume and the special features because it's one of them where it's not the film's fault. It's a great adaptation of the comics. But I'm going to talk about the audio track. I've got Dolby Atmos again. I've got the rear speakers. I've got a few comments on recent videos about what the setup is. I always put them into a link in the description if people are curious. So I've got a JBL 9-to-1 soundbar, and the speakers can detach, get put to the back of the room, and then put back to charge, which is so much better space-wise. And this film sounded great on them again. And this is something I've noticed recently. I spoke about, well, it'll be in a video tomorrow, a Godzilla recommendation. I watched the Godzilla 4K earlier this week. That's one of the best audio I've heard of all my 4K Blu-ray so far. And with Dolby Atmos, if you're not aware of the 3D sound mechanism, one thing I've noticed more and more is it's not just, I mean, we all know it's not just about loud noises, but when the 3D audio is kicking in, it's been really apparent on the films where, I don't want to say you get helicopters, that's such a boring thing, but when there is 3D imagery within the film, within the scene, helicopters flying over, action sequences, this lended itself really well to Dolby Atmos. I'm just going to say, of course, there's flying scenes, there's a lot of action, obviously explosions, bullets and whatnot. The audio track I quite liked with it. I think it was fairly decent. Again, I had the lowest of expectations with this film, and rewatching it, I wasn't really sure what to think. Was I going to dislike this more? Was I going to like it more? But in the correct environment, I really did vibe with this film a lot better, and they do benefit this. But the real standout of this film, and I'm reading the back now because this film has special features. The 4K has special features. I moaned about Mission Impossible. I said Barbie should have had a lot more. I know we're getting Oppenheimer next week. That's going to have 3 hours of special features. This completely caught me off guard. I saw the back, and it says literally here, Blue Beetle Generations, Scarab Vision, Blue Beetles, Nano Knows Best. I thought, Christ almighty, 3 special features, you've got to be joking. And to my credit, to the film's credit, there's over an hour of special features because 2 of the 3 I've just mentioned are essentially menus within the main menu, and inside of them is loads of other documentary bits, behind the scenes, the costumes, some of the more internet sort of Xolo Miranda talking to camera to promote the film. Obviously none of that got released with the SAG strikes, and I thought this is where it's maybe changed my thoughts on this review somewhat. Watching behind the scenes, proper behind the scenes, knowing that they've got cameras on set from day one. It isn't the last day of filming, they've just got them all to sit down, give the interviews to the camera, we're going to cut, edit this, say brilliant, here's our special features. They've documented the production of this film right the way from before filming ever began, from the photo shoots of the cast, to the casting stages, to costume test designs. I felt really connected to it because of that. And it's a great way to get to learn more about the production, the producers, the director, the writers, the cast members, the varying cast members. And I was completely blown away at the fact that a film such as Blue Beetle, in this capacity, has ended up with some better special features than some of the biggest films of the year. And that sort of shows how frustrating it can be looking at home media stuff. There's an interview with Chris Ferner going viral this week where he makes a joke about streaming services and how you need to buy the films so they don't steal them. But in the actual full 2-minute interview, he speaks about how he was able to learn so much more about the craft of directing from special features, from watching DVDs and behind the scenes of his favourite directors. And it's stuff like this that make a difference, where you're seeing people on set, you're seeing the production coming together. People don't just want bloopers or people laughing and smiling, saying how great their time's been, but it feels like this family connection. And this film is all about family, of course, with the setting. I know it's a fictional town, but it's very much a Latinx film, and we haven't had that represented with superhero films in the past. So it's very difficult for me, as not just a white person, but British as well, talking about that representation is very different over here in the United Kingdom compared to America, of course. But I thought when the film is essentially this message of family, the family being in the key sequences, they even speak about the possession scene and behind the scenes, saying, how often do you see these with every single family member watching the person being possessed? And it just got me thinking a little bit more about the attention to detail that goes into it. And I mentioned the costume previously as well. I'm not a fan of the costume. But then they start bringing the comics on the screen that this costume is based off. It's the 3rd iteration of Blue Beetle. This is the costume he has, and they have made the jump from page to screen in a really interesting way. It's following the origin of the character, and I kind of compared it to Ant-Man at that point, that of course the Ant-Man film wasn't the first Ant-Man, but we were given Paul Rudd's Ant-Man instead. And I think that's the key there, is these companies can make conscious decisions about which person they'd like to see represented. The Flash, of course, has done that over the last few years with Barry Allen, not just being the lead of the film, but the TV as well. He's been the first Flash on screen rather than the traditional ones. And I find it really interesting when filmmakers do this. I think it makes it somewhat more interesting. I know in some cases you can't really do that with characters like Batman, Spider-Man. I know we're getting Miles Morales, which is amazing, and eventually in live action we'll surely get a Miles Morales film, but I thought it was really interesting for me as a complete outsider to this character, to more modern DC comics, to find out a bit more about this, and that's what special features do for these films. I know I'm way off topic now, but it really did make a difference being able to get some first-hand interviews. Again, the production team, seeing the effort that's going into this, I really appreciate that, and that massively puts this up in my estimation. And it also makes it so much more frustrating that, not horribly put, but if a film like Blue Beetle can have some decent behind the scenes, why can't Mission Impossible, why can't Barbie, why can't God knows how many films that have come out this year that we haven't spoke about? So it's a really weird way to segue out of this review, because with respect to the film and a recommendation, it's tricky with this, because I would be lying if I said this is like a perfect film, you've got to add it to your collection immediately. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying don't see this, don't recommend this. I'm not. I'm in this weird middle ground. I've never really been in with these home media releases, because the special features are so much more interesting than many of the new releases. My recommendation for this film is coming from, I guess I'm going to go with your DC background. If you're a fan of this character, if you're a fan of the film, if you're a fan of the DCEU, you want to know more about how this film was made, how the production came across, then I thoroughly recommend picking this up. Now, the format, 4K or Blu-ray, whatever's best for you. I do not know if the special features are on all of them. I do know if you go to the Warner Bros. Website, you can, if you buy it off there, you get put into a competition to win loads of merch as well. But it's really interesting with this that I'm sort of torn on the recommendation. So the way I'm going to bestly put it, this is worth picking up if you're already invested in DC, if you're invested in the DCEU, if you're invested in DC moving forward. As I said, Blue Beetle supposedly isn't done as a character. If he is going to stay with James Gunn's universe and what the plans are after Superman Legacy, then maybe this film will end up being an essential purchase. But for now, I'm in the middle. It's up to you guys at home. I know that's not definitive, but as I said, I spoke well about the special features. That's a real treat. I'm not saying it's more interesting than the film. The film's fine. And that's where it comes into, right? Can you justify spending the money on this disc for the film being just fine? You've got to be a pretty big fan to do so. So that's me leaving it there. Maybe it's the sort of thing you ask a relative to get you for Christmas if they're doing that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know what people do, how they celebrate Christmas, but for me, this was a lovely surprise. And I'm genuinely saying that when I mean to. The film is already out. As I said, it was released on Monday here in the UK to pick up. And maybe it'll get a bit of justice. Maybe it'll come on down the line. Maybe it'll end up on some streaming services where it'll perform better. Who knows? Because this film certainly is not what a lot of people thought it would be. And that's how I'm going to round out this 4K Ultra HD review. I've had a fair few of these recently. I keep mentioning Barbie and Mission Impossible. I'm going to do an Oppenheimer review next week. I have a Steelbook on pre-order. I want to watch the entire 3-hour special features. So 4K stuff is staying. There's going to be a new series in January about building up collections and whatnot. At the moment on the channel, things are heaving. We've got the Disney 100th anniversary ranking video on Sunday. Me and Tate pre-recorded that, so we're in the process of editing it. By the time this video goes up, I will be on a train to the cinema in London to watch Napoleon. So there'll be a Napoleon review on the channel tomorrow. Of course, the new Ridley Scott film. We've got the Hunger Games coming out this weekend. We've had loads of new releases. We've had the Braun GP documentary. We've had Monarch Legends of streaming on Apple tomorrow. It's been an insanely busy week for the channel. So if you enjoyed this video, if you like what we've spoke about, what we've been talking about, do subscribe. There is a lot more on the way. And in the meantime, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.